I was sitting in my small apartment on a quiet Sunday morning, scrolling through my phone when my heart stopped. There on Instagram was a series of photos from my family's Hawaii vacation. Beautiful shots of my parents, Tom and Patricia, laughing on the beach, my brother Jake holding a tropical drink by the pool, and group photos at a luxury resort with the caption, Family Vacation. So grateful for these precious moments. I stared at the screen in disbelief, realizing that I had been completely forgotten on the family trip I had been planning for months. They had left without me. Before I tell you how I disappeared from their lives completely and why they are now begging me to come back, let me know in the comments what country you are watching from and smash that like button if you have ever felt invisible in your own family. What happened next changed everything, and trust me, you will not see this ending coming. Let me paint you the picture of how this family dynamic had been building for years. I am Ruby, 26 years old, and I have always been the independent daughter, while my older brother, Jake, 29, has been the golden boy who could do no wrong. Growing up, the difference in treatment was subtle but constant. Jake's birthdays were elaborate celebrations with expensive gifts and big parties, while mine were quiet family dinners with maybe a card and a small present. When we were in college, my parents paid Jake's entire tuition at a prestigious university, covering his room board, and even spending money. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs and earned a full academic scholarship to put myself through school. When I graduated with honors, the celebration was overshadowed by Jake's latest crisis needing attention. When Jake graduated 2 years later with mediocre grades, they threw him a huge party and bought him a new car. Jake had been unemployed for nearly 2 years after quitting his job at a law firm, claiming the work environment was toxic and he needed to find his passion. At 29, he still lived in our childhood bedroom at my parents' house, contributing nothing to household expenses while I had been supporting myself since graduation. My parents justified this by saying Jake was taking time to figure things out and that he was more sensitive than I was. The pattern was always the same. Jake's needs came first, his feelings were prioritized, and his struggles were treated as family emergencies. When I faced challenges, I was told I was strong enough to handle it and should be more understanding of Jake's situation. I had internalized this dynamic so completely that I rarely asked for help, knowing it would be redirected to whatever crisis Jake was experiencing. 3 months before the Hawaii trip, my parents had mentioned wanting to take a family vacation to celebrate my father's promotion at work. We had spent several dinners discussing potential destinations, with Hawaii emerging as the top choice. I immediately requested vacation time for my graphic design job and started saving money from my modest salary to contribute to the trip expenses. During the planning discussions, I noticed that I was rarely included in the detailed conversations. When I asked about flight times or hotel arrangements, I was told not to worry about it and that they would handle the logistics. Jake and my parents would have hushed conversations about the plans that would stop when I walked into the room. I should have recognized these as red flags, but I was so excited about finally having a real family vacation that I ignored my instincts. The financial planning was particularly strange. When I offered to pay my share of the expenses, my mother Patricia waved me off, saying they wanted this to be their treat. But I noticed they never discussed the costs when I was around, and Jake seemed to know details about the resort and activities that I did not. Looking back, I realized they had been planning a trip for 3 people from the beginning. The day of departure arrived, and I had packed my bags the night before, setting 3 alarms to make sure I would be ready. Our flight was supposed to leave at noon, and I expected a call around 8 a.m. to coordinate the ride to the airport. When 8 o'clock came and went with no contact, I started to feel anxious but told myself they were probably just running behind schedule. By 10 a.m., I was genuinely worried and called my mother. She answered the phone, sounding rushed and distracted, saying, "Oh, honey, I am so busy packing right now. Can I call you back?" Before I could ask about pickup time, she had hung up. I tried calling my father, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Jake did not answer either. At noon, I drove by my parents' house and noticed their car was gone. The driveway was empty and the house looked closed up. I sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to process what was happening. Maybe they had gone to the airport early. Maybe they were picking me up from a different location. I called the airline to check if there were any changes to our flight, but the representative told me there were only 3 passengers listed on the reservation. That afternoon, I watched in growing horror as social media posts began appearing. First was an Instagram story from my mother at the airport showing her and my father at the gate with Jake, all wearing matching Hawaiian shirts I had never seen before. The caption read, off to paradise with airplane emojis. I called frantically, but all their phones were turned off for the flight. By 6 p.m., I was seeing posts from the airplane itself. Jake had uploaded a selfie with my parents, all looking relaxed and happy, with hashtags like family time and blessed. I sat in my apartment, still in the clothes I had planned to wear on the plane, surrounded by my packed luggage, trying to understand how my entire family had forgotten I existed. When they finally landed in Hawaii, I managed to reach my mother on the phone. Her voice was cheerful and relaxed when she answered clearly, having a wonderful time. "Oh, honey," she said casually when I demanded an explanation. "We thought you were too busy with work. This was really a last-minute decision for just the three of us. Mom, I took vacation days specifically for this trip. We have been planning this for months." I said, my voice shaking with disbelief. Well, Jake really needed this break after all the stress from his job search. You know how sensitive he is. We thought it would be better as a smaller group this time. What about me? I am your daughter too. I have been looking forward to this for months. Do not be so dramatic, Ruby. We will plan something else later. You are independent. You do not need family vacation like Jake does. The conversation with my father was even worse. When I called him separately hoping for some sanity, his response was devastating. "Sweetie, you have always been the strong one. You have your own apartment, your own life, your own career. Jake is still struggling and he lives with us. He needed this more than you do. So because I am self-sufficient, I do not deserve to be included in family activities. That is not what I am saying. Jake has been really depressed about the job situation, and your mother thought a change of scenery would help motivate him. You understand, right? You have always been the mature one." When I finally reached Jake, his response was the final straw. "Sis, you need to chill out. It is just a vacation. We will bring you something nice from the gift shop," he said dismissively. When I pressed him about how they could leave without telling me, his selfishness became clear. "You are being selfish. Cannot you see? I needed this mom and dad work hard, and they deserve to enjoy their money however they want. Stop trying to make everything about you." That night, I stared at my suitcase, still packed, and sitting by my front door, like a monument to my family's indifference. I thought about every time I had been pushed aside for Jake's needs, every celebration that had been overshadowed by his drama, every sacrifice I had made for a family that saw me as optional. Sitting there in my empty apartment while they enjoyed paradise, I made a decision that would change everything. If they could forget I existed when it was convenient for them, maybe they should learn what my complete absence really felt like. The first phase of my plan was immediate withdrawal from all contact. I blocked my family on every social media platform, unfriended them on Facebook, and removed them from my Instagram and Snapchat. I left all family group chats and changed my phone number without telling anyone. Within 24 hours, I had erased myself from their digital world as completely as they had erased me from their vacation. Phase 2 was geographical distance. I had been toying with the idea of relocating for career growth, and this betrayal gave me the motivation I needed. I submitted a transfer request to my company's Portland branch, 3 states away from my family. The request was approved within a week, partly because they needed experienced designers, and partly because my boss could see I was desperate for a fresh start. Breaking my apartment lease cost me $1,500 in penalties, but it was worth it for the clean break. I sold most of my furniture, packed my essential belongings into my car, and drove away from the city where I had spent my entire life. I did not leave a forwarding address with my landlord or notify any family friends of my plans. As far as my family would know, I had simply vanished. The third phase was complete communication blackout. I created new email addresses, new social media accounts under a different name, and informed my workplace that no family members should be given any information about my whereabouts or contact details. I blocked extended relatives who might serve as intermediaries and made sure there was no way for information about my new life to filter back to my parents or Jake. Building a new life in Portland was surprisingly liberating. My new apartment was small but sunny, and for the first time in my life, I could decorate and live exactly as I wanted, without considering anyone else's opinions. I joined a hiking group, enrolled in a pottery class, and attended a weekly book club. My new colleagues were friendly and welcoming, and they knew nothing about my family drama. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Meanwhile, back home, the reality of my absence was beginning to hit my family. When they returned from Hawaii, tanned and relaxed, they expected to regale me with stories of their adventures and perhaps face a brief period of my being upset before things returned to normal. Instead, They found my phone disconnected, my apartment occupied by new tenants, and my workplace unwilling to provide any information about my location. My mother's panic escalated quickly. She showed up at my old apartment building multiple times, interrogating neighbors about where I might have gone. She called my former coworkers, college friends, and even reached out to people I had not spoken to in years. When she contacted my employer, the HR department informed her that I had transferred but could not provide details about my new location. By the third week, they had hired a private investigator at a cost of $3,000. The investigation revealed that I had changed my phone number, closed my bank account, and left no forwarding address. My social media accounts had been deactivated, and there was no digital trail leading to my new life. The police refused to file a missing person report because I was clearly an adult who had chosen to disappear voluntarily. Jake's mental health began deteriorating rapidly as the reality of what they had done sank in. For the first time in his life, he was forced to confront the consequences of his selfishness. He started having panic attacks, convinced that something terrible had happened to me. The guilt was eating him alive, and he finally entered therapy after years of my parents' gentle suggestions falling on deaf ears. The crisis in my family deepened when my father Tom suffered a heart attack during his third month of searching for me. The hospital needed detailed family medical history, and they realized that I was the only one who had that information organized and accessible. I had always been the one who managed family medical records, insurance information, and emergency contacts because I was so good at staying organized. 3 months into my new life in Portland, I was thriving in ways I had never expected. My work performance had improved dramatically without the constant stress of family drama, and I received a promotion with a significant salary increase. I had started dating Daniel, a freelance photographer who found my independence attractive rather than threatening. My physical health had improved as well. I was sleeping better, had more energy, and felt genuinely happy for the first time in years. The hiking group had become like a second family to me, and I was building genuine friendships based on mutual respect and shared interests. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, was helping me process years of family trauma and understand the patterns of behavior I had normalized. For the first time, I was learning what healthy relationships look like. The unexpected contact came through my old college friend Emma, who still lived in my hometown. She called my new number, which she had gotten through a mutual friend, with news that shattered my peaceful bubble. "Ruby, I do not know what happened between you and your family, but your dad is in the hospital. They have been looking for you everywhere." My internal conflict was immediate and overwhelming. Part of me wanted to rush back and resume my role as the family caretaker, while another part of me knew that returning would undo all the progress I had made. After much deliberation, I decided to call the hospital directly rather than contact my family. I spoke with my father's doctor, provided the necessary medical history, and ensured he had the information needed for proper treatment. I refused to give my contact information or speak directly with my father when he requested it. During those months of my absence, the full extent of my contributions to the family had become painfully clear to them. My grandmother Rose, who had early-stage Alzheimer's, had been deteriorating rapidly without my regular visits and care coordination. I had been the one managing her medications, doctor appointments, and daily check-ins tasks that no one else had thought to take over. The financial strain was also becoming apparent. I had been quietly helping with various household expenses for years, contributing to utility bills and maintenance costs without making a big deal about it. With my income gone and Jake still unemployed, my parents were struggling to maintain their standard of living. The house repairs I had always coordinated were piling up because no one else knew which contractors to call or how to negotiate fair prices. Jake finally moved out of my parents' house and into a small apartment, driven partly by guilt and partly by my mother's increasing resentment. She had begun blaming him for the family's disintegration, pointing out that his selfishness had cost them their daughter. He found a job at a marketing firm, accepting a lower salary than he had wanted, because he finally understood that beggars could not be choosers. After 6 months of silence, my family wrote a collective letter that was mailed to my old workplace and forwarded by a sympathetic HR manager. The letter was a genuine acknowledgement of their mistakes, with each family member taking responsibility for their role in my departure. Jake's portion was particularly moving as he detailed years of manipulation and selfishness that he was finally confronting in therapy. My parents admitted that their favoritism had been wrong and that they had taken my strength and independence for granted. They acknowledged that treating me as less deserving of family time and attention had been cruel and unfair. Most importantly, They did not try to guilt me into returning or promise that everything would go back to the way it was before. When I finally agreed to a video call after 6 months of complete silence, the change in my appearance shocked them. I looked healthier, happier, and more confident than they had ever seen me. My hair was different, I had lost weight from all the hiking, and there was a lightness in my eyes that had been missing for years. Jake broke down crying on camera, apologizing repeatedly and admitting that he had never appreciated what a good sister I was. My mother's reaction was perhaps the most honest. "We lost our daughter," she said quietly, "not to an accident or an illness, but to our own selfishness and blindness. I see now how much you did for this family, how much you gave without asking for anything in return. We took you for granted because you made everything look so easy." The new relationship I built with my family was completely different from what we had before. I established clear boundaries about communication frequency, topics of conversation, and expectations for mutual respect. I agreed to monthly video calls, but no visits in the near future. Any help I provided would be voluntary and appreciated, not expected or taken for granted. Most importantly, I made it clear that my life in Portland was now my priority. I had built something beautiful and healthy for myself, and I would not sacrifice that to return to old patterns. My family had to prove they had changed through actions, not just words, before I would consider rebuilding trust. Jake's transformation was perhaps the most dramatic. Therapy had helped him understand how his entitled behavior had affected everyone around him. He was working consistently for the first time in years, living independently and actually contributing to family expenses instead of draining them. He sent me regular updates about his progress, not because I asked for them, but because he wanted to show me he was becoming a better person. A year after my disappearance, I was living a life I had never imagined possible. My relationship with Daniel was growing stronger, built on mutual respect and genuine compatibility. My career was flourishing, and I had been offered a senior designer position that would have been impossible in my old life of constant family obligations. The friends I had made in Portland had become my chosen family people, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could do for them. My relationship with my original family remained limited but honest. We spoke monthly, and the conversations were more genuine than any we had shared before my departure. There was no pretending that everything was fine, no sweeping problems under the rug for the sake of keeping peace. When my father made a full recovery from his heart attack, I was genuinely happy for him, but I did not feel obligated to be his primary caregiver. The most important lesson I learned was about my own worth. For 26 years, I had believed that my value came from being useful to others, from solving their problems, and asking for nothing in return. My disappearance taught me that I was worthy of love and attention, simply for existing, not for what I could provide. I learned that family relationships should be reciprocal, not one-sided arrangements where one person gives everything and others take whatever they want. 6 months later, when my grandmother Rose was moved to a memory care facility, I participated in the decision-making process via video call, but did not return home for the transition. It was painful to maintain that distance, but I knew that resuming my old role as family caretaker would undo all the progress we had made. Instead, I helped coordinate care from Portland and ensured she received the best possible treatment without sacrificing my own well-being. Sometimes people ask me if I regret disappearing so completely, if I wish I had handled the situation differently. The answer is no. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people is show them what life looks like without you in it. My family had to learn to function without using me as their emotional and practical safety net, and the experience made all of us stronger and more honest. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, but what I learned is that absence also makes priorities crystal clear. The people who truly love you will fight to keep you in their lives, not take you for granted until you are gone. My family learned to value me by losing me, and I learned to value myself by refusing to accept treatment that said I did not matter. What would you do if your family left you behind on a dream vacation? Have you ever felt invisible in your own family, like your needs and feelings did not count as much as everyone else's? Share your story in the comments below and hit that like button if this resonated with your own experiences of being taken for granted. Subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries, finding your worth, and the courage it takes to walk away from people who do not treat you right. Please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they deserve better treatment from the people who claim to love them. Remember, you cannot force people to value you, but you can stop accepting treatment that says you do not matter. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it inspires you to know your worth and demand the respect you deserve from everyone in your life, especially family.